What if the universe has already sent its messenger, and humanity failed to understand the message space stretches outward in silence, a silence so deep it feels eternal? Yet even in that silence, a faint disturbance once traced its path through the dark. A traveler from beyond the sun's dominion. An interstellar object slipping across the void with neither warning nor explanation. Astronomers had seen such wanderers before. ʻOumuamua, the first to arrive, moved like a shard torn from another star. Then came Borisov, a cometary visitor with a tail of gas and dust. Both had left behind puzzles that unsettled even the most seasoned scientists. But in 2019, telescopes caught sight of a third, Atlas. At first, it seemed only another piece of drifting stone or ice. Yet its path unsettled predictions. Its light curves resisted simple interpretation. Its brightness rose and fell in ways that refused easy answers. Instruments strained for clarity. Equations bent to fit the data. Still, the object resisted understanding. Here was not just another foreign guest. Here was something stranger. Stranger than ʻOumuamua's tumbling speed, stranger than Borisov's fragile trail. A body that carried contradiction at every turn. Was it merely a fragment cast loose by cosmic chance, or was it something more, a signal? A messenger. A reminder that the cosmos does not answer to human expectation. Atlas entered the solar stage not with clarity, but with mystery. And that mystery now lingers, asking a question that science alone cannot yet resolve. It began as the faintest whisper against the noise of the sky. On a quiet night in 2019, the Atlas telescopes in Hawaii scanned the heavens as they had done countless times before. Their task was humble in intent, yet monumental in purpose. Atlas, the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system, was designed to search for danger. It swept the skies for asteroids that might cross paths with Earth. A safeguard meant to provide days or weeks of warning should catastrophe ever approach. Each night, its wide-field eyes traced billions of points of light, capturing the endless hum of stars and galaxies, comets and asteroids. Against that endless backdrop, most signals meant little more than routine cataloging. But this time, the telescopes registered something different. A faint, shifting spark moving just enough to draw attention. At first, it was almost nothing. A blur, barely distinct from the static. Yet with each pass of the instruments, the signal resolved. Astronomers began to calculate its trajectory, its motion, its origin. And what the numbers revealed was not ordinary. This was no asteroid bound to the gravitational chains of the sun. Its speed was too high, its orbit too open. The path did not close into an ellipse, but stretched outward into infinity. This was an intruder from interstellar space. They called it 3I Atlas, the third known visitor from beyond the sun's grasp. Its name, unadorned and technical, could not contain the magnitude of what it represented. For the third time in recorded history, humanity was watching the passage of an object not born here, a fragment from another star system, a messenger that had drifted across the gulfs of light years to pass briefly through the realm of human eyes. The first had been ʻOumuamua, discovered in 2017 by the Pan-STARRS survey. It was long, thin, tumbling chaotically as it sped away from the sun, refusing every simple classification. Some called it a comet without a tail, others a shard of rock unlike any seen before. The second, Borisov, had appeared in 2019. Unlike ʻOumuamua, it wore a familiar veil, a glowing cometary coma, a tail streaming outward under solar wind. Yet even Borisov seemed fragile, breaking apart under stresses that hinted at a delicate alien composition. Now came Atlas. At first, scientists leaned on the comfort of labels. Its light curves, its rise in brightness seemed comet-like. They classified it as such, a comet from beyond, a traveler that carried ices and dust frozen under a foreign sun. But the orbit told a different story. Its hyperbolic path was not the looping track of a returning comet. but the clean cut of an object set free from another system altogether. Its velocity, nearly 30 kilometers per second relative to the sun, was more than enough to escape forever. Comparisons began at once. Was it another ʻOumuamua with its stubborn refusal to show a coma, its strange acceleration? Or was it more like Borisov, whose gases painted the sky with familiarity, even as its origin remained alien? In truth, Atlas seemed to stand between them. It brightened like a comet, but its breakup came swiftly, almost violently, as if its structure was far weaker than expected. For astronomers, the excitement was immediate and profound. Humanity had not just seen a rare event, it was witnessing a pattern. 3 times in 3 years, the cosmos had delivered interstellar fragments into the solar system. 3 emissaries, each unique, each unsettling. What once seemed almost impossible, to catch a visitor from another star, now seemed inevitable. The galaxy, vast and restless, was not separate from human observation. It was reaching in, offering glimpses. The discovery lit a fire across observatories worldwide. Instruments turned to follow its path. Spectrographs strained to capture its fingerprints of light, to decode its chemistry. Could this be water ice from another star's nursery? Could it be carbon compounds unknown in local comets? Each data point felt like a clue. Each observation, a chance to touch another system without leaving Earth. Yet, alongside the exhilaration, there was unease. Atlas behaved strangely even in its disintegration. As it neared the sun, it broke apart more quickly than models predicted. Its fragments glowed, then dimmed, leaving astronomers uncertain of its true size, shape, or structure. Once again, the universe had given a messenger wrapped in mystery, and with that mystery came reflection. If 3 interstellar travelers had crossed into sight within a handful of years, how many more had gone unnoticed? How many had passed silently, unseen, while the instruments of Earth were still blind to their paths? Perhaps the galaxy was not a distant backdrop, but an active highway, where fragments of stars and planets drift endlessly, crossing into the solar system more often than once believed. Atlas carried with it the thrill of discovery, but also the weight of perspective. It was a reminder that the solar system is not an island, but a port, and that each fragment arriving from the deep may hold within it the history of worlds never seen. In those early days, scientists dared to imagine. What secrets might its dust carry? Could amino acids, the precursors of life, be hidden in its frozen shards? Could the building blocks of biology drift freely between stars, seeding systems with the potential for awakening? Or was Atlas merely debris, a relic cast off in violence, carrying no story but its own decay? The telescopes recorded. The papers were written. The debates ignited. But beneath the equations and the data was a quiet truth. Humanity had not summoned Atlas. It had simply appeared. It had chosen no path but the one gravity dictated, and yet, to those who watched, it felt as though the universe had once again knocked gently on the window of human awareness. 3 messengers now stood in the record books. ʻOumuamua, Borisov, Atlas, each had carried mystery. Each had unsettled certainty. Each had whispered that the cosmos is far stranger than expected, and Atlas, the third, came not as confirmation, but as a question. A question still unfolding. The first nights of observation brought fascination. The weeks that followed brought unease. What began as a faint point of light quickly unfolded into a spectacle that defied every expectation. Atlas was fragile. Too fragile. Its body seemed unable to withstand the warmth of the sun, disintegrating far more rapidly than ordinary comets. Where most comets grow brighter, streaming long tails of dust and gas as they approach the inner solar system, Atlas faltered. Its brightness flared, then dimmed, then flared again like a candle struggling against the wind. Telescopes caught sudden surges of luminosity. Not gradual, not smooth, but erratic. One night it would blaze more brightly than predicted. The next it would fade, as though something within it had collapsed. This was not the steady outgassing of frozen volatiles that astronomers had charted countless times before. It was something stranger. The brightness curve refused to align with theory. Some scientists suggested fragmentation, pieces of the comet's nucleus breaking apart, exposing fresh surfaces to sunlight, releasing sudden bursts of energy. Others wondered if its structure had always been tenuous, a rubble pile held together by forces too weak to survive the journey. Its rise and fall in light resembled not the behavior of a solid traveler, but the slow unraveling of something brittle and doomed. Still, the paradox lay in its path. Its orbit, traced with precision, was unmistakably hyperbolic. This was no long-period comet making its first visit to the inner solar system. Its speed and trajectory could not be bound by the sun's gravity. Its home lay in another star's domain, yet its body behaved as though it had never before felt the touch of starlight. If it truly came from the deep between stars, why did it fall apart so easily? Should it not have endured colder, harsher realms? Should its ice not have been hardened by millions of years adrift in interstellar cold? Instead, it behaved like something frail, something never meant to survive the heat of approach. The contradiction unsettled astronomers. Some argued that interstellar comets may be inherently weaker than their solar system cousins. Perhaps they are fragments of planetesimals shattered in ancient collisions, their structures never compacted, their ices never shielded. Others suggested that Atlas might have been touched by processes foreign to local physics. Cosmic rays, interstellar shocks, or exotic chemistry that rendered it more fragile than anything observed before. Still, no explanation was complete. The observations told a story in fragments. On one hand, a hyperbolic orbit, the unambiguous signature of an interstellar origin. On the other, the inexplicable fragility of a body that should have withstood far more. It was as if nature itself had chosen to hand humanity a puzzle without a solution. The scientific community wrestled with the data. Some modeled its light curves, trying to fit equations to the erratic surges. Others debated its composition. Was it carbon-rich dust, volatile ices, or an unknown mix altogether? Each hypothesis revealed part of the picture, but never the whole. Each attempt at certainty gave way to another question. Beyond the numbers, there was a deeper recognition. This was the third interstellar visitor, and yet it was stranger than the two before. ʻOumuamua had moved with eerie precision, accelerating without a visible source. Borisov had appeared familiar, though frail, reminding scientists of known comets. But Atlas resisted both patterns. It brightened too quickly, shattered too soon, and left no clear legacy but confusion. For those who watched, it was not just an astronomical anomaly. It was a philosophical confrontation. Human science thrives on patterns, on categories, on order imposed upon the chaos of reality. Yet Atlas refused every neat definition. It was a comet and it was not. It was interstellar, and yet it crumbled like something fragile and local. It was a messenger, and yet its message dissolved before it could be read. The shock was not only in the data, but in the reminder of human limitation. Even with the most advanced telescopes, the most careful calculations, the truth of Atlas remained just beyond reach. The universe had presented a phenomenon that would not be tamed by equations. It had given a glimpse, then withdrawn, leaving behind only contradiction. Some scientists reflected openly on this. They noted how easily humanity assumes that nature will conform to its categories, that every object must fit into asteroid or comet, native or foreign, unstable or fragile. Atlas whispered otherwise. It suggested that reality is not bound by the lines humans draw across it. It reminded observers that the cosmos is under no obligation to be comprehensible. The emotional undertone deepened with time. To witness Atlas was to witness something slipping away. It was breaking apart before it could be understood. Each flare of brightness, each dimming, was another page of its story torn away before it could be read. In that fragility was a kind of beauty, but also a kind of grief. The sense of something profound offered, then lost. At Mauna Loa and Haleakala, where Atlas had first been seen, astronomers lingered on the paradox. Instruments had caught the traveler, but could not hold it. Data poured in, but clarity did not. The visitor was leaving, fragmenting into dust and vapor, fading into the starry silence from which it had come. And so the first shock of Atlas was not its discovery, but its refusal. Its refusal to play by rules. Its refusal to give clear answers. Its refusal to stay intact long enough for humanity to measure it fully. In this, Atlas became not only a scientific puzzle, but a mirror. A reflection of the limits of perception, a reminder that knowledge is never complete, that the universe speaks in riddles as often as in revelations. The silence of space swallowed its fragments, scattering them beyond recovery. Yet the memory remained. The flares on the light curve, the fragile body dissolving into nothing, the orbit that traced a line from another star. Astronomers watched as the messenger faded, leaving only data points on charts and unanswered questions in their minds. They could measure its light, but not its meaning. They could trace its path, but not its purpose. And in that gap, between what was known and what resisted knowing, lingered the true shock of Atlas. Not that it was fragile, not that it was foreign, but that it showed with quiet defiance that the universe still holds truths beyond comprehension. It is one thing to discover. It is another to understand. Atlas allowed the first, it denied the second. And so, the third interstellar visitor did not simply add to human knowledge. It unsettled it. It tore open a space where certainty had been expected. It forced reflection on what it means to seek patterns in a cosmos that does not promise them. The fragments of Atlas may be gone. The data may be incomplete. Yet the question it posed still hangs in the silence between the stars. What happens when reality itself refuses to be explained? The deeper scientists looked, the stranger three-eye Atlas became. Its discovery had already unsettled expectation. Yet in the months that followed, as observatories across the globe turned their instruments toward it, the story only grew more tangled. The more data collected, the more the object seemed to resist clarity. The first evidence came from its light. Photometric curves told astronomers how brightness rose and fell as sunlight struck its surface. But Atlas's light curve was unlike that of ordinary comets. Instead of a smooth climb in luminosity, it flared erratically. One surge of brilliance would suggest fresh material exposed by sublimation. Another sudden dimming would follow, as though a fragment had already broken free and drifted into darkness. The pattern resembled not growth, but struggle, a body unraveling under forces it could not withstand. Spectral analysis brought its own puzzles. Using instruments capable of separating light into its component wavelengths, astronomers search for chemical signatures. Ordinary comets yield clear markers: water vapor, carbon monoxide, cyanide compounds glowing in the ultraviolet. Atlas too showed hints of such volatiles, but the signals were faint, inconsistent, and often overwhelmed by noise. At times it seemed rich in frozen gases, at others almost barren. The ambiguity left open more questions than answers. Trajectory data, at least, carried no doubt. Its orbit was unmistakably hyperbolic. This was not a long-period comet returning after millions of years. It was a visitor from outside the sun's realm, carrying the momentum of interstellar travel. Yet here lay the paradox. If its structure was so fragile, how had it endured that long journey? How could a body that shattered so easily near the sun have survived the violent ejection from another star system, the unshielded exposure to cosmic rays, the frigid vacuum of interstellar space? The contradictions multiplied. Some astronomers proposed that Atlas had been rich in volatile ices, more fragile than typical comets born in the Kuiper Belt or Oort cloud. Its brightness surges, They argued were caused by sudden releases of trapped gas pockets as the sun's warmth seeped inward. Others suggested tidal stresses, invisible gravitational forces that had strained the comet's nucleus during its passage. Perhaps a close brush with Jupiter or Saturn had destabilized its structure before it even reached the inner system. Still others invoked the unknown. Interstellar space is filled with cosmic radiation, shock fronts, and the turbulent remains of ancient supernovae. Could Atlas have been scarred by those environments, weakened in ways Earth-based models could not capture? Could its fragility itself be the signature of a history alien to the solar system? Comparison soon turned to its predecessors. ʻOumuamua, the first interstellar object, had defied categories by accelerating without a visible source. No tail, no outgassing, yet a measurable push away from the sun. Borisov, the second, had been almost the opposite. It was pristine, a cometary archetype, rich in gas and dust, its behavior echoing the comets long catalogued within the solar system. Atlas seemed to belong to neither lineage. It was not stable like Borisov, nor silently propelled like ʻOumuamua. It carried traces of volatility, but its demise came too swiftly, too dramatically. In its destruction, it resembled neither known comets nor strange shards. It behaved like something in between, or like something entirely new. The debates reflected more than technical disagreement. They revealed a deeper tension between the human desire for order and the universe's indifference to it. Every dataset demanded classification. Every anomaly begged for placement within a pattern, yet Atlas refused. It hovered in the margins of comprehension, defying both categories and compromise. For some scientists, this resistance was almost poetic. The universe, they reflected, often speaks in contradictions. Stars are born in clouds of destruction. Black holes erase information yet shape galaxies. Quantum mechanics insists that particles can be in two states at once. Why should a cometary visitor from another star conform to anything simpler? And then came the more speculative voices. Was its breakup itself a kind of message? Not intentional, not designed, but symbolic. A reminder that interstellar space does not deliver neat answers. That the fragments of other systems will arrive as riddles, incomplete and confounding. The destruction of Atlas was not failure. It was revelation in another form. Astronomers traced the dust cloud that replaced it. Even in death, the object lingered, scattering fine particles that drifted across the solar system. Each fragment was too faint to study in detail, but their collective glow marked the site of collapse. It was as though the messenger had dissolved into whispers, leaving only echoes where once there had been a single body. The contradictions left a mark on human thought. Was this what interstellar exploration would always be? Glimpses of the incomprehensible, vanishing before they could be fully understood? If so, the challenge was not only technical but philosophical. To study the universe was also to confront the limits of certainty, to acknowledge that not every question will yield an answer. Still, the search continued. Observatories across continents pored over their data, hoping for overlooked clues. Archival images were re-examined to find traces of Atlas before its official discovery. Models were refined, equations adjusted, theories tested against the fragile light curves, yet the contradictions held firm. No explanation fit all the evidence. For many, this was the first shock repeated in a new form. ʻOumuamua had challenged assumptions about shape and motion. Borisov had shown the fragility of cometary structure. Now Atlas forced scientists to admit that even with 3 data points, no coherent pattern emerged. Each visitor had been singular, refusing to settle into a shared story, and perhaps that was the point. The universe, vast and unyielding, does not craft its travelers for human understanding. It casts fragments into the void, and a few happen to cross paths with Earth. Their messages are incomplete, their forms contradictory, their truths elusive. But in that elusiveness lies meaning, for it is not certainty that drives exploration, it is wonder. The scientists who watched Atlas fade understood this. The contradictions were frustrating, but they were also fuel. They hinted at how little is known of interstellar space, how vast the unknown remains. Atlas had disintegrated, but it had not disappeared. It lived on in equations and debates, in the restless curiosity of those who searched for meaning in its fragments. In the end, patterns were drawn only to be broken. Contradictions were revealed only to deepen, and Atlas left behind a legacy not of clarity, but of questions. Was its fragility an accident of composition, or a signature of alien chemistry? Was its orbit a simple consequence of gravity, or a relic of some violent ejection from another star? Did its breakup erase its message, or deliver it in another form? A reminder that not all mysteries can be solved. These questions linger still, suspended between data and imagination. For the story of Atlas is not only about what was seen, but about what could not be explained. It is a story of light that flared and dimmed, of fragments that scattered, of patterns that dissolved into contradiction. And perhaps that is the truest message it carried. That the universe does not conform to human categories. That reality is not obligated to be simple. That even in failure to understand, there is beauty and there is meaning. As Atlas faded into dust, scientists were left not with answers, but with a reflection. To search the stars is to confront contradiction. To study the cosmos is to accept that not everything will resolve into clarity. Sometimes the greatest revelations lie not in what is known, but in what resists knowing. And so Atlas remains, not in the sky, not in the instruments, but in the questions it left behind. As the data on 3I Atlas accumulated, one thing became certain. There would be no single easy explanation. What had begun as an extraordinary discovery now unfolded into a storm of speculation, each theory clashing with the next. Each attempt at clarity dissolving into deeper uncertainty. Some astronomers began with the simplest idea. Perhaps Atlas was not a solitary body, but a fragment, the broken shard of something larger. A planetesimal, maybe, torn apart before it ever crossed the solar system. Its fragility, its swift disintegration, could be the consequence of a long and violent history. Just as impacts in the early solar system shattered rocks into asteroids and comets, so too might other star systems produce debris fields. Atlas, they proposed, might have been the surviving fragment of such destruction, drifting for millions of years until gravity guided it into Earth's view. Others turned their gaze toward the origins of planetary systems themselves. They imagined Atlas not as a ruin, but as a relic. Perhaps it was leftover material from the birth of a distant star's planets. Just as comets in the Oort cloud preserve the chemistry of the solar system's earliest days, Atlas might preserve the frozen memory of another system's infancy. Its inconsistent spectral signals, its strange volatility, might then be clues not to weakness, but to difference, a fingerprint of a chemistry foreign to Earth's skies. To study Atlas, even in fragments, was to peer into another star's nursery. But even these natural explanations strained against the evidence. Its brightness curve flared too violently. Its body crumbled too easily. Its behavior defied every neat model. So other, more exotic ideas emerged. One camp speculated about unusual forms of ice. Some proposed hydrogen ice, vast deposits of frozen molecular hydrogen that might exist in the outer reaches of certain systems. Hydrogen, sublimating rapidly under sunlight, could explain the erratic brightness and the fragile structure. Others suggested nitrogen ice, perhaps chipped from the frozen crust of a Pluto-like world circling another star. The redness of its glow in some observations seemed to echo that possibility. If true, Atlas might represent not a cometary fragment, but a piece of a distant, icy planet. Yet neither hydrogen nor nitrogen ice fit the data perfectly. Hydrogen should have evaporated long before Atlas reached Earth's telescopes. Nitrogen ice could not fully explain the contradictions in its flare and decay. Each theory illuminated a part of the mystery, but none could capture it whole. Still deeper speculations rose to the surface. What if Atlas contained something unseen before, exotic compounds forged under alien conditions? What if its chemistry belonged not to familiar categories, but to processes that never occurred in the solar system? To entertain this possibility was to acknowledge how little is known of planetary formation across the galaxy. For every model tested here, there may be dozens unimagined elsewhere, and then, inevitably, came the fringe. If an object does not behave like any known comet, and if it refuses all natural categories, could it be something artificial? Could Atlas, like ʻOumuamua before it, represent not debris but technology? The suggestion was not new. In 2017, Avi Loeb, a Harvard astrophysicist, had argued that ʻOumuamua's strange acceleration might be best explained by a thin, sail-like structure, perhaps an artifact from another civilization. The claim had stirred fierce debate. Many dismissed it as premature, others as reckless. Yet it had also ignited the imagination. For once, the question of extraterrestrial technology was being posed in peer-reviewed papers, not only in speculation. With Atlas, the echo of that argument resurfaced. Its fragility, its abrupt breakup, its erratic flares of brightness, could these be signs not of weakness, but of design? Could Atlas have been some form of artificial construct, long since abandoned, now drifting into the solar system? Most scientists resisted the leap. The data did not demand it. Natural explanations, however incomplete, remained more likely. Hydrogen ice, nitrogen fragments, rubble piles, all were extraordinary, yet still within the bounds of astrophysics. To invoke technology from another star was to risk leaving science for speculation. Yet the question lingered, unspoken in some circles, openly debated in others, because the truth was unavoidable. No explanation fully fit, not the fragment theory, not the relic of planetary birth, not hydrogen ice nor nitrogen, not even the possibility of design. Each possibility solved one puzzle, but left another unanswered. Each hypothesis closed one gap, only to open a new one. The tension grew not from lack of ideas, but from too many. Atlas became a mirror for human imagination, reflecting the hopes, fears, and uncertainties of its observers. It was science pressed to its frontier, where certainty ends and speculation begins, and within that frontier lies philosophy. For what does it mean when nature refuses to be pinned down? When every model breaks against contradiction? When every explanation dissolves under new data? Perhaps Atlas was less a body to be understood than a reminder of the limits of understanding itself. Still, the debates raged on. In conferences, in journals, in late-night exchanges between researchers staring at graphs and spectral lines. Was Atlas a messenger of chance, a shard of alien rock with nothing to say? Or was it something more? Its very contradictions a signal that the cosmos will not conform to human categories. Theories escalated because the mystery demanded it. Not because the answers were within reach, but because the questions could not be ignored. Atlas was fragile, yes. It was volatile, yes, but it was also enduring in another sense. Its fragments may have scattered, its light may have dimmed, yet it remained alive in thought, in speculation, in the restless effort to make sense of what refuses to be simple. And so Atlas left the scientific community with a paradox of its own. To understand it required imagination as much as data. To explain it required humility as much as theory. Perhaps that was the true escalation. Not in the theories themselves, but in the realization that the universe is not obliged to yield to them. Atlas broke apart, but in doing so, it multiplied. Not in fragments of dust, but in fragments of thought. Each theory another shard, each speculation another piece, each contradiction another reminder that knowledge, like comets, is fragile. And yet, from that fragility comes wonder. For in the unanswered questions of Atlas lies a deeper truth. That science is not only the pursuit of certainty, but the embrace of mystery. That exploration is not only about what is known, but about what resists knowing. That sometimes the universe speaks most clearly not in answers, but in silence, And Atlas, the third messenger, spoke that silence more powerfully than words. The solar system is a theater of motion, every body following its invisible script, every orbit bound to the gravity of the sun. Yet sometimes, an outsider enters, a traveler unbound, carrying a trajectory that cuts across the stage with neither invitation nor warning. Three-Eye Atlas was one such traveler, and its path traced a line toward the red planet. From the first orbital calculations, astronomers noticed it. The numbers showed a course that passed unnervingly close to Mars. Not a collision, not an impact, but close enough to draw the mind toward possibility. For a world that has long been imagined as humanity's second home, the idea carried weight. Here was an interstellar fragment, fragile and strange, crossing near the planet that has always stirred human imagination. The connection was not only mathematical, it was historical, even mythological. For as long as stories have been told, Mars has carried an aura of foreboding. The ancients called it the Harbinger, the red star of war. Its ruddy glow was linked with omens, with blood, with the unsettling reminder of mortality. To see Atlas trace a path so near to Mars was to awaken echoes of those ancient fears. The red planet, once feared as a sign of calamity, now became the silent witness to a cosmic visitor that itself defied understanding. Still, the trajectory was not fate. It was geometry. Orbital mechanics do not bend to symbolism. The fragments of Atlas, breaking apart as they were, posed no clear danger to Mars. Yet the image lingered. The idea that a piece of another star system could brush past the world humanity dreams of colonizing unsettled the imagination. Scientists considered the remote but not impossible scenarios. What if fragments small and unseen did intersect planetary orbits? What if shards of Atlas drifted into gravitational capture, striking Mars or seeding its thin atmosphere with dust from another star? Such events were improbable but not impossible. And in those margins of possibility lay both awe and unease. For in cosmic timescales, the improbable has a way of becoming inevitable. The reflection deepened into questions of planetary defense. Earth has long looked inward, developing systems like Atlas itself to guard against local threats. Asteroids, near-Earth objects, comets whose orbits cross dangerously close. Yet here was a reminder that not all threats are local. That the galaxy itself can send fragments into the inner solar system. That danger, however rare, might not be bound to familiar skies. If Atlas could pass near Mars, what would prevent another, larger fragment from passing near Earth? What protection exists against the unknown trajectories of interstellar debris? The question was sobering. Planetary defense has always seemed an exercise in cataloging and predicting, but Atlas showed the limits of that certainty. To defend against what cannot be predicted is to confront the fragility of civilization itself. And so Mars, the Red Sentinel, became the stage for reflection. It turned beneath its pale skies unmoved while the visitor swept past. Humanity's telescopes watched from afar, aware that the planet had become a witness to something both ordinary and extraordinary. A body of dust and ice, yes, but also a messenger from another system, brushing past the very world that has come to embody human ambition. There was symbolism in the alignment, whether intended or not. Mars, the planet of myth and war, the frontier of human exploration, stood silent as the third interstellar visitor crossed near its path. It was as if the cosmos itself had staged the encounter. A reminder that human dreams of colonization and progress unfold against a backdrop of forces indifferent to them. The scientists who traced Atlas's orbit saw something larger than geometry. They saw a pattern emerging. 3 interstellar objects in just a handful of years. First ʻOumuamua, then Borisov, now Atlas. What had once been thought vanishingly rare was becoming familiar. The galaxy was no longer a distant abstraction. It was reaching into the solar system again and again, delivering fragments of its story. The realization was profound. If interstellar visitors are common, then the solar system is not isolated at all. It is porous, open to the wanderers of the galaxy. Each fragment is both a risk and a revelation. A risk because impact cannot be ruled out. A revelation because each carries the chemistry and history of another world. To study them is to study the galaxy without leaving home. But the knowledge carried a dual weight. For while the mind thrilled at the thought of learning from these travelers, the heart trembled at the reminder of fragility. Civilizations rise and fall under the illusion of permanence. Yet here was a reminder that the universe does not stop at the boundaries of Earth or even of the solar system. It sends messengers, sometimes beautiful, sometimes destructive, always indifferent. Mars, then, became more than a planet in this story. It became a symbol, a witness. The red harbinger of old myths, now recast as the quiet observer of interstellar passage. It reminded humanity that even as it dreams of new worlds, it must reckon with the forces that drift across space without warning. Astronomers continued to refine Atlas's orbit, tracking the fragments as long as they remained visible. The numbers grew more precise, the path more certain, yet the sense of unease never fully faded. To watch something from another star pass near Mars was to feel the thinness of separation between worlds. The solar system is not sealed. It is a crossroads, and in that crossroads, Atlas was only the third known traveler. How many more had passed unseen? How many more would follow? The answer was humbling. If 3 had been found in just a few years, then perhaps interstellar visitors are far more common than once imagined. Perhaps the night sky is full of them, faint and overlooked, drifting across the planets with stories humanity has not yet learned to read. Mars turned on, unbroken by the encounter. Its thin atmosphere stirred with dust, its desert stretched in silence. It gave no sign, no omen, no voice. But it had been a witness. The third cosmic intrusion had crossed its path, and the red planet carried that silent testimony into the future. The story of Atlas near Mars is not one of collision, but of perspective. It is the reminder that the solar system is not isolated, that planetary defense cannot rely only on what is local, that human dreams of colonizing Mars unfold in a universe far larger and less predictable than the maps suggest. And it is the reminder, too, that even in silence the cosmos speaks, not in words but in paths traced through the sky, not in prophecy but in geometry, not in answers but in questions. Mars, the ancient harbinger, the frontier of human hope, became the witness to a visitor from another star. And in that witnessing lay a truth both unsettling and beautiful. The universe is alive with motion, and humanity is not the center of its story. Atlas brushed past the red planet, leaving behind no crater, no mark, no trace but memory. Yet in that memory, it left a question that lingers still. How many more will come? And when the next does, where will its path lead? There comes a point in every investigation when the data, no matter how carefully gathered, refuses to settle. When equations fail, when models collapse, when the evidence itself seems to whisper of something beyond comprehension. With 3i Atlas, many scientists felt they had reached such a frontier. Natural explanations had been offered. Fragile ice, exotic chemistry, fragmentation under tidal stress. Each proposal carried merit. Each solved a fragment of the puzzle. Yet none resolved the contradictions fully. And so, as with ʻOumuamua before it, the silence of certainty opened the door to speculation. What if natural explanations fail? What then remains? Some asked whether Atlas was truly singular. Perhaps it was not an isolated fragment at all, but part of a greater pattern. First ʻOumuamua, then Borisov, now Atlas, 3 interstellar visitors in scarcely more than 2 years. Was this coincidence, or was the solar system being brushed by a stream of debris, fragments shed from a larger event far beyond human sight? Could these be not solitary wanderers, but messengers from a catastrophe in another star system? The remnants of worlds destroyed, cast outward into the galaxy? The idea carried weight, for the universe is violent. Stars are born in fire and die in collapse. Planets are shattered by collisions, their fragments strewn across interstellar space. Atlas might have been one such shard, a drifting piece of a system broken long ago. If so, then its contradictions were not anomalies, but signatures of its history, the evidence of forces too vast to reconstruct, scars written into its fragile body by events too distant to imagine. Others reached for a different horizon. Could Atlas and its predecessors be something more deliberate? A series of messengers not accidental but purposeful. The thought was unsettling and for many unscientific. Yet it lingered, as speculation often does when the ordinary fails. If fragments can drift between stars, could civilizations too leave debris in their wake? Could some interstellar objects be relics of engineering, their broken forms indistinguishable from natural rubble? Avilob's echo returned here. He had argued that ʻOumuamua might have been artificial, a fragment of technology. His suggestion had ignited controversy. Yet as Atlas disintegrated, its strangeness revived the question. Could the galaxy carry ruins drifting unrecognized through the dark? The thought was not entirely implausible. Humanity itself has already sent fragments into interstellar space. The Voyager probes with their golden records drift outward now. New Horizons, too, races beyond Pluto. If one day Earth were silenced, these machines would remain, relics of a vanished civilization crossing the gulfs of space. To another world, they might appear as nothing more than anomalies, debris with inexplicable behavior. If Earth could produce such relics, why not another world? And if Atlas were one such ruin, then what humanity witnessed was not simply an interstellar comet breaking apart, but the death of a machine, the fading of a messenger crafted long before humans existed. Einstein once reflected that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. Yet Atlas seemed to challenge even that hope. Its contradictions resisted explanation, its signals refused coherence. And so the possibility emerged that perhaps what was seen was not comprehensible, not yet, because it belonged to a realm of processes beyond present physics. Stephen Hawking had warned against complacency in the face of cosmic silence. He argued that silence did not mean safety. It did not mean absence. It might only mean waiting. To watch Atlas disintegrate was to wonder whether humanity was glimpsing not silence but signal, not absence but presence beyond recognition. The terrifying possibility lay in this. Perhaps Atlas was evidence of processes or technologies so advanced that they appear as ruin. Arthur C. Clarke once wrote that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. By extension, any sufficiently advanced ruin would be indistinguishable from nature. To consider Atlas in this way is to walk the boundary between science and philosophy, between evidence and imagination. If it was artificial, humanity would have no way of knowing. If it was natural, humanity still does not know how. The tension lies not in choosing between them, but in recognizing how little separates them when knowledge fails. For in the dust of Atlas lay a reflection, the reflection of human limits. The reminder that the universe is not built to satisfy the categories of a single species on a single world. That reality is vast enough to accommodate contradictions, and deep enough to conceal truths for which language does not yet exist. And so, the question remained. Was Atlas only another fragment of stone and ice crumbling under a star it had never known? Or was it part of a pattern, a series of messengers crossing into view, hinting at a larger story yet unseen? Or was it something else entirely, a relic of design, a ruin drifting through eternity, carrying no message but its survival? The silence of space gives no answer. The data will not resolve. The fragments are gone. What remains is speculation, and in that speculation, the echo of wonder and fear entwined. For perhaps humanity was not meant to understand. Perhaps the glimpse itself was the gift. Atlas came, it shone, it broke, it vanished. What it was remains unsettled. What it means may never be known. Yet in its contradictions lies the possibility that the universe has already spoken, not in words, but in riddles, and humanity listening must decide whether to dismiss them as noise or to hear in them the faint stirrings of something beyond science. There is always a quiet after the storm, a stillness that follows when the debates fade, when the instruments fall silent, when the fragments of an interstellar traveler dissolve into darkness. In the wake of Three-Eye Atlas, that stillness has become its legacy. What remains now is not the data, not the light curves, not the spectral lines, not the orbital calculations scrawled across scientific papers. What remains is a deeper silence, one that lingers in the human mind. The silence of recognition that the closer humanity looks, the less it seems to understand. Atlas was expected to yield knowledge. Instead, it left questions. Its fragility defied models. Its brightness resisted explanation. Its path confirmed an interstellar origin, yet its behavior contradicted every known law of cometary physics. The more precise the measurements became, the more the certainty slipped away. What does it mean when the cosmos resists explanation? Science has always been an act of faith in the comprehensibility of nature. The assumption that the universe, however vast, can be mapped, modeled, understood. That in its equations lie truths that human minds can grasp. And often, this faith has been rewarded. The movements of planets, the birth of stars, the expansion of the cosmos, all have been drawn into patterns, their mysteries translated into knowledge. But Atlas was different. Atlas was a reminder that not all mysteries unravel, that some remain not because instruments failed, but because reality itself resists being bound. If Atlas was natural, it reveals how little is known of interstellar matter. A single fragment passing through the solar system, and yet it refuses comparison. Neither like ʻOumuamua nor like Borisov, neither fully comet nor fully asteroid. Perhaps it carried ices unknown here. Perhaps its chemistry belonged to the nursery of another star, shaped by processes foreign to this corner of the galaxy. If so, then Atlas is a reminder that the universe is richer, stranger, and more varied than current models dare to imagine. But if Atlas was not natural, if it was something else, then the implications stretch even further. It could have been a relic, a ruin, a fragment of technology adrift across the stars. It could have been a messenger, not in words but in presence, reminding humanity that it is not alone. And yet there is no way to know which. The data cannot decide. The fragments are gone. The question remains unanswered. This is what terrifies most. Not what is known, but what refuses to be known. For in the silence after Atlas, humanity is left not with clarity, but with reflection. What if the universe does not wish to be explained? What if it reveals itself only in glimpses, never fully, never cleanly, always with contradictions stitched into the fabric of its revelations? Einstein's words return here. The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. Yet Atlas stands as a quiet rebuttal. It was comprehensible in orbit, but incomprehensible in nature. Comprehensible in path, but incomprehensible in form. It was both knowable and unknowable, both measured and mysterious. Stephen Hawking's warnings echo too. That cosmic silence should not be mistaken for safety. That absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. In Atlas, humanity witnessed not silence, but contradiction. Not a void, but a riddle. And in that riddle, there may be something more, unsettling than silence itself, the possibility that the cosmos speaks, but not in a language humanity can yet translate. Philosophy lingers where science falters. Was Atlas merely an accidental traveler, drifting without meaning, its contradictions only the byproduct of fragile chemistry? Or was it a sign that the universe holds processes beyond human comprehension, technologies or phenomena that lie beyond the horizon of physics? The truth may never be known, and perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the meaning of Atlas is not in what it revealed, but in what it withheld. Its silence is its message. Its contradiction is its lesson. The universe does not give answers freely. It offers only questions, wrapped in silence, delivered in fleeting glimpses that vanish before they can be fully understood. The emotional weight of this truth is heavy, for humanity's longing has always been for clarity, to know, to understand, to bring order to the unknown. Yet Atlas denied this longing. It came, it fractured, it vanished. What it was remains unsettled. What it means remains unresolved. And yet, in that denial lies a strange gift. The gift of humility, the gift of wonder, the gift of knowing that not all things will fit the categories human minds impose upon them. For what terrifies most is not danger, but mystery. Not the known threats of asteroids cataloged and tracked, but the unknown visitors that resist comprehension. Atlas was fragile, fleeting, yet in its brief passage it left behind something enduring. The reminder that the universe is not bound to explanation. Now it is gone. The fragments scattered, the glow faded, the path traced into memory. But the mystery lingers, not in telescopes, not in data, but in thought, in the questions that remain unanswered, in the silence that follows. And perhaps that silence is the true message. That the universe is vast, that its truths are not always within reach, and that sometimes the most profound revelations are not in what is known, but in what resists knowing. Atlas has departed, but its echo remains, a reminder written not in words, but in absence. Not in answers, but in questions. The third messenger from beyond is gone, and yet its mystery endures, as a mirror held up to the limits of human understanding, and as a quiet warning that the cosmos is deeper, stranger, and far less comprehensible than ever imagined. In the end, what Atlas leaves behind is not certainty but wonder, and perhaps that is enough.